Nicole, 32, lives a quiet, structured life just outside Boston, where she co-founded a successful biotech startup. Every morning, she makes her espresso, listens to the weather, and walks to her office a block away. Though she's built a life of discipline and purpose, her family never truly saw her. To them, Nicole was always the weird younger sister, too quiet, too plain, too focused on work they didn't understand. All the praise, all the attention went to Claire, her older sister. Claire, the beautiful one, the charming one, the one with boyfriends who were doctors and dinner parties filled with admiration. Meanwhile, Nicole was treated like a footnote, a name mentioned quickly in passing. She does something in biotech, I think. No one asked about her company, her sacrifices, or the $2 million public health contract she once rescued at midnight. To her family, success didn't count unless it looked a certain way, and Nicole never fit their picture. It was supposed to be a simple phone call. Nicole had just wrapped up a major funding round with a New York firm, the kind of success that should have been met with congratulations, maybe even a little pride. Instead, as she sat in her Boston apartment, espresso cooling in her hand, her father's words hit like a slap across the face. "If possible, don't come home this year," he said, calm but detached, as though he were discussing weather, not his daughter. Nicole blinked, stunned. For a moment, she thought maybe he was concerned she was working too hard. Maybe he didn't want her to stretch herself too thin. But his next words clarified everything. Claire, her older sister, was bringing her new boyfriend to their mother's birthday. A man who was a CFO, well-spoken, impressive. Nicole's job, he said, was hard to explain. Her presence might cause awkward comparisons. He didn't want her to come. He didn't want her there at all. Her grip on the phone tightened. "Are you saying I make the family look bad?" she asked, voice low and shaking. Not from anger, but something colder, deeper. Disbelief. Hurt. Her father didn't backtrack, didn't apologize. Instead, he doubled down. "If you insist on coming," he said, voice flat, "then don't call me your father." And just like that, the line went dead. The silence in her apartment became deafening. No beeping, no follow-up message, not even the tension of unresolved argument. Just the soft hum of life outside and the fading warmth of her untouched coffee. Nicole sat there frozen, staring ahead at nothing, the words looping in her mind like a mantra. "If you insist on coming, don't call me your father." A sentence sharp enough to cut the last thread she'd been clinging to, the hope that someday, somehow, her family would see her, not as a second choice, not as an afterthought, but as someone who mattered. She didn't cry. Nicole didn't scream or throw things or call anyone to vent. Instead, she stood up, walked quietly to her desk, and opened her laptop. In her calmest, most methodical state, she logged into her banking app. For 2 years, she had been the invisible provider, sending money every month to cover her parents' utilities, cable, water, internet, even car repairs. Nearly $6,000 a month, with no questions asked and no thanks given. Her parents had never said, "We appreciate you." Only, "Claire's struggling a bit. If you can help, that'd be great." And she always did. Without delay, without recognition, without even being invited to the table. Now, staring at the transaction history, the total stared back like a cruel joke, $15,720. A sum that represented not just money, but years of overlooked sacrifice, years of being told she wasn't enough. Her fingers hovered over the cancel auto payment button. One by one, she clicked electric, water, internet cable. Canceled. Quietly. Deliberately. No fanfare. No announcement. Just like how she had always been in the family. Quiet, deliberate, unannounced. When her mother's birthday came, Nicole didn't send a card. She didn't call. She didn't post some polite message online for appearances. Not out of spite, but because something inside her had shifted. The illusion had finally cracked. She could no longer pretend this was the kind of family you return to out of love. That night, while sipping peppermint tea alone on her balcony, her phone lit up. First, a message from her mother. The power was out. Could Nicole check on it? Then from her father, no water, no internet. Fix it. No mention of the phone call. No apology. Just the same cold demands they'd always sent her way, like she was still the family's invisible problem solver. Then Claire texted. Guests were arriving. Mom was nearly in tears. The internet was down. What's going on? Nicole typed out a reply. She even included the line her father had told her about not calling him Dad if she insisted on coming. But she didn't send it because she knew nothing she said would matter. They wouldn't hear it. They never had. She deleted the message, set the phone down, and leaned back in her chair. For the first time in her life, she wasn't holding on to hope that they would choose her. She was choosing herself. And that quiet, steady act of saying, enough, felt like the most powerful thing she'd ever done. The morning of her mother's birthday arrived in a strange, weighted quiet. Nicole sat by her window, wrapped in a soft knit sweater, sipping a cup of peppermint tea. The sky above Boston was overcast, the kind of gray that seemed to press down on the city like a secret no one wanted to admit. For the first time in years, she had no intention of calling, texting, or sending flowers. Not because she had forgotten, not because she was cruel, but because pretending didn't feel possible anymore. She had already been erased from the guest list, dismissed by her own father, and reduced to a source of quiet financial support. Never love, never pride, just utility. So this year, there would be no performance. At exactly 9:02 a.m., her phone buzzed. It was her mom. Nicole didn't move. She let the screen glow and fade without touching it. 30 seconds later, another message arrived. Nicole, sweetheart, I think the power's out. Can you check for us? It's an important day. Nicole placed the mug down gently, her fingers steady. Of course, her mother hadn't forgotten today was her own birthday, but she had forgotten the words her husband had said to their younger daughter only a few weeks before. Or maybe she hadn't. Maybe she just didn't care. To them, Nicole was never the daughter who came home to celebrate. She was the one who handled the electric bill. At 9:18 a.m., her father chimed in. Still no power. Water's not running either. Is something wrong with the payments? Call the provider now. There was no greeting, no context, no warmth. Just another demand, another order, as if Nicole still existed for one reason only, to make their lives easier. What they didn't know, what none of them had thought to ask, was that Nicole had already canceled everything. The night her father told her she was unwelcome, that she embarrassed the family, she had sat in her office and logged into every account tied to their house. Electric, internet, cable, water. One by one, she canceled auto payments she had been covering for over 2 years. Quietly, no confrontation, no fanfare, just silence. The same silence they had always given her in return for $15,720 of unacknowledged support. Now, on the very day they were trying to impress Claire's boyfriend, their world was falling apart. Guests were arriving to a house with no light, no working stove, no Wi-Fi, and no idea how to fix any of it. And the only person who could have solved the problem had been cast aside because her job was hard to explain. By noon, the messages were piling up like a frantic drumbeat. Nicole, please, I'm begging you, her mother wrote. Guests are arriving. Can you just help this once? Her father followed with, we can't cook. Where are you? Take care of this now. Then Claire, seriously, Nicole, today is special. Mom's about to cry. There's no internet. I can't call anyone. I'm losing it. Can you stop being selfish? Nicole stared at her screen. Not a single message asked if she was okay. No one mentioned the way she had been disinvited. Not one person acknowledged the reason behind the chaos. They just needed her to clean it up. Again, she didn't reply, not out of cruelty, but because she had already done more than enough. She had spent years showing up, paying bills, staying quiet when they treated her like a ghost in her own family. But today, she wasn't going to be their safety net. Then came the unexpected. Aunt Sharon called. A video chat. Nicole hesitated, then picked up. The screen flickered to life, revealing a dark kitchen lit by a flashlight. Nicole, her aunt said softly, "Your mom's in a panic. Everyone's running around. No one knows what to do." Nicole said nothing. She just listened. And in the background, she heard her mother's voice, sharp, frustrated, blaming her. "She's probably sulking. No one would be heartless enough to do this." Then, another voice entered the frame. Familiar, uncertain. "Nicole, Claire's boyfriend." Liam stared into the camera. "You're Nicole Warren? The one who runs Pacific Genomics." She nodded. And just like that, everything stopped. Liam turned to the room and said, "Clearly, she's my boss. She approved my transfer. I report directly to her." Stunned, silence followed. Claire's face dropped. Their parents froze. And Nicole didn't gloat. She didn't speak. She just ended the call. She placed her phone down and sat back. Outside, the wind stirred the branches just slightly. Inside, for the first time in years, she felt no guilt, no need to apologize. The truth had revealed itself, not with a scream, not with revenge, just with silence, and the simple absence of the woman they thought they could erase. The day Liam walked into the office, everything felt still, the kind of stillness that lingers before a storm breaks, not loud, but electric. Nicole sat behind her desk, reviewing quarterly forecasts, when a quiet knock came at her door. She looked up, expecting a staffer, maybe a meeting reminder. But then the door opened, and in stepped Liam Prescott, sharply dressed, portfolio in hand, and visibly tense. He paused, eyes landing on her face, and in that 1 second, everything in his expression changed. Recognition flooded his features. "Nicole," he said, voice low, almost breathless. Nicole didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She offered the faintest smile and nodded. "Welcome to Pacific Genomics," she said evenly, motioning for him to sit. "I'll be reviewing the financial plan for this quarter. I look forward to working with you." Her voice was calm, her hands steady. There was no malice, no smugness, just a quiet assertion of truth. Liam stood frozen for a moment, then slowly took the seat across from her, his earlier confidence dimmed by the weight of realization. He hadn't known. None of them had. In all her years of building this company, sleepless nights, investor meetings, setbacks, breakthroughs, Nicole's family had never asked what she did. They'd never bothered. To them, she was just the quiet one, the weird one, the sister who worked somewhere in biotech, the girl who wasn't photogenic enough, charismatic enough, or easy to brag about. Claire had always been the center of attention. Nicole was just a blurred presence on the sidelines. And now, Claire's carefully crafted narrative had begun to unravel, not by confrontation, but by circumstance. Liam didn't say much during the meeting. His usual polished demeanor cracked at the edges. He listened intently, took notes, nodded when appropriate, but the questions in his eyes never faded. When the meeting ended, he left without a word. Nicole leaned back in her chair, not triumphant, not vindictive, just still. This wasn't a game she tried to win. It was simply the moment life decided to reveal what had been true all along. The next day, her phone buzzed. A video call from Aunt Sharon. Nicole answered. The image on screen was chaos. Her mother pacing, her father shouting about power outages, Claire frantically gesturing near the dining room. The party they'd excluded her from was crumbling. And then Liam appeared behind them. He glanced at the screen, his eyes landing on Nicole, and he froze. "You're Nicole Warren?" he asked aloud. "You're my boss." Everyone fell silent. Nicole held his gaze. "Hope your introduction today goes well," she said softly, then ended the call. Back at home, she placed her phone down and returned to her tea. No explanations. No drama. The truth had done what years of arguing never could. It had spoken for itself. And now it echoed in a house full of stunned faces and broken illusions. Hours later, Claire's message came through. Long, frantic, laced with blame. "You knew all along, didn't you? You let it happen. Mom's been crying all night. Liam doesn't know how to react. Don't you think that was cruel?" Nicole read the words slowly without emotion. She waited a while before replying, then typed calmly, "I didn't do anything. I stayed home. I didn't start the call. I didn't say I was his boss." If one truth was enough to ruin everything, maybe everything wasn't built on much to begin with. She sent it and didn't wait for a response. By morning, Liam's email arrived. An apology, respectful, thoughtful. "I'm not ashamed that you're Claire's sister," he wrote. "I'm ashamed I didn't see it sooner. I'm ending things with Claire. I can't be with someone who lacks basic respect." Nicole read it twice, nodded to herself, and replied only with this: "Everyone chooses how they see others. I never needed revenge. I just needed the truth to be seen. And now you've seen it. And that was enough." She never raised her voice, never demanded recognition, never stooped to their level. Instead, Nicole chose silence, not because she was weak, but because she finally understood its strength. In that silence, the real story emerged. The boss they once dismissed, the daughter they never valued, the woman who never needed to shout to be heard. They had always assumed she was invisible. But now, the spotlight had shifted, and she didn't even have to move. After the video call ended, and Liam said the words that shattered the room, "She's my direct superior," Nicole didn't move. She didn't check her phone. She didn't wait for fallout. She simply stood up, made herself tea, and watched the Boston skyline fade into the early evening fog. The silence that followed wasn't eerie. It was earned. And when the first messages rolled in from her family, one after another like panicked waves, she didn't flinch. Claire was first. Long paragraphs filled with panic, anger, and desperation. "You knew, didn't you? You sat there and let that happen. You let him say it in front of everyone. Mom was crying. Dad was furious. Liam won't even look at me. How could you do this?" Nicole read the words with a stillness she'd never known before. She replied simply, "I didn't do anything. I didn't call him my boss. I didn't bring up the company. If one truth ruined everything, maybe everything wasn't that strong to begin with." She hit send. Nothing more. The next morning, Liam's email arrived. Measured, respectful. "I'm sorry for not seeing things sooner," he wrote. "I ended it with Claire last night. I can't be in a relationship where there's no honesty or respect. Thank you for your silence. It taught me more than any argument ever could." Nicole responded with grace. "No apology needed. People choose how they see others. Sometimes the truth speaks louder than voices ever will." She thought that was the end, but Claire wasn't done. Hours later came the next message. "Please talk to him. Tell him I'm not like that. Tell him it was just a bad moment. He listens to you. You're his boss." Nicole stared at the screen. After years of invisibility, here was Claire, begging for help not out of love, but out of fear. She typed, "Liam didn't leave because of what I said. He left because of what he saw. And maybe for the first time, he saw it clearly." She didn't wait for a reply. 3 days later, there was a knock at her apartment door. Unexpected, heavy. When she looked through the peephole, she froze. Her parents, her mother clutching a small paper bag, her father with arms crossed and eyes scanning the hallway like he was preparing for a battle. Nicole opened the door slowly. "Hi, honey," her mom said, voice soft. "Can we come in?" She didn't say yes, but she stepped aside. In the living room, no one sat like family. There were no hugs, just water glasses placed on the table and the kind of tension that's been waiting to break for years. Her father spoke first. "About your mother's birthday. Maybe we were too harsh. Claire's upset. Your mom's been crying. So we thought we should talk." Nicole said nothing. She was used to the preamble. She waited for the ask. And then her mother pulled out the paper. A printed list. "We were wondering if you could support us. Just a small contribution. $2,000 a month. Nothing big. You're stable now. Your job is great." Nicole blinked. "What about Claire?" Her mother hesitated. "She's not doing well. The breakup, her work, we can't put pressure on her right now." Nicole gave a small, almost disbelieving laugh. Not bitter, just tired. "So, you can pressure me? You're stronger," her father said quickly, like it was a compliment. Nicole leaned forward. "I'll agree to contribute. 1,000 a month. If Claire matches the other half. And I want a contract, a signed agreement that when you pass, the house and all assets go to me." The silence that followed was thick. Her father's face flushed. He slammed his hand on the table. "We raised you for 20 years, and this is how you repay us. With contracts." Nicole didn't raise her voice. She didn't flinch. "I don't owe you. If you think parenting was an investment, we can calculate that value line by line. But I won't pay with guilt anymore." Her mother stood up, eyes glossy. "Maybe we should talk later." "Maybe," Nicole said, but she knew they wouldn't come back. And she didn't need them to. When the door closed behind them, she didn't cry. She didn't shake. She just stood there, letting the final piece settle into place. For years, she had been the fixer, the one they turned to when things broke. But now, she had said no, and that changed everything. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. It was closure. Quiet, final, and hers. After her parents walked out that day, the silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was liberating. No texts, no voicemails, no emotional blackmail or last-minute guilt trips. And Nicole didn't expect any. She had spent most of her life hoping for apologies that never came, waiting for affection wrapped in acknowledgement. Now there was just space to breathe, to think, to be. She returned to her usual rhythm. Quiet mornings with coffee brewed, just the way she liked it. Team meetings where she led without raising her voice. Emails stacked with data projections and new partnership proposals. No one at the office knew about the storm that had just passed. And no one needed to. She smiled more, not because everything was perfect, but because for the first time, nothing was being taken from her. Guilt used to sit on her shoulders like a weight she couldn't shake. Whenever she said no, even softly, it echoed as a failure in her mind. But now, every decision she made came from a place of clarity. She wasn't cruel for setting limits. She wasn't heartless for choosing peace over obligation. She had simply stopped bleeding herself dry for people who only saw her as a solution. Liam had become a quiet fixture in the office, always professional, always focused. They never talked about Claire, not once. He never asked for updates, and she never offered. He respected the boundary, and in doing so, earned her quiet gratitude. Some truths, once understood, didn't need to be revisited. When she passed him in the hall or signed off on his proposals, there was a mutual nod of recognition, not for what had happened, but for how it had been handled. Without drama, without spectacle. just honesty, finally visible. Nicole stopped using the family photo as her phone wallpaper. She didn't send birthday messages, didn't mark holidays with a generic text or a gift card. The more she stepped away, the more she realized how much of her life had been wrapped around other people's needs, emotions, and convenience. It wasn't rebellion, it was realignment. She didn't owe her family her silence or her savings. Not anymore. Sometimes she thought about Claire, not with anger, but with a distant ache. There had been a time when she would have done anything to earn her sister's approval, a compliment, a text, even just acknowledgement. Now, Claire's absence in her life didn't sting. It just felt quiet. And sometimes quiet is the greatest gift. Her parents' silence was different. It wasn't the kind that comes from reflection. It was the kind that came from being denied control. They didn't know how to exist in a dynamic where Nicole wasn't compliant. She imagined them still blaming her for what fell apart. But she no longer carried that blame. She had laid it down like old luggage at a station she would never return to. One rainy Friday afternoon, she left the office later than usual. The city glistened under the streetlights, raindrops tapping against her umbrella. She stopped by a familiar cafe and took a seat by the window. The barista, who knew her name but not her past, brought over her usual order. She sipped the latte slowly, watching people pass, some in a rush, some arm in arm, others lost in their own worlds. On the wall near her table was a carved wooden sign she hadn't noticed before. Home is not always a place. Sometimes it's a choice. She read it twice, her breath catching slightly. For years, she thought home was where her family lived. But now she understood. Home could be where you were seen, where peace wasn't conditional, where you weren't constantly auditioning for affection. As she finished her drink, she felt no need to check her phone, no urge to scroll through messages, no anxiety over what might be waiting. She walked out into the rain, without rushing, letting the drops hit her shoulders. They felt cleansing, not cold, not sharp, just real. Nicole had learned that love without respect is just obligation. And obligation, without mutual care, is a slow erosion of the soul. She had stopped apologizing for existing, stopped shrinking herself to fit into a narrative that never belonged to her. She didn't need a reconciliation to feel whole. She didn't need her family's praise to feel proud. She just needed to be herself. And for once, that was more than enough. As the rain softened to a mist and the streetlights flickered gently above, Nicole walked forward, lighter, freer, and finally at peace with every choice she had made. Not because it was easy, but because it was hers. And for the first time, she truly believed she deserved the life she was building. In the quiet moments after everything had unfolded, Nicole sat in her apartment and finally allowed herself to think, not about what had happened, but about what it had always been. Growing up, she'd heard the same phrase over and over: family comes first. But the version of family she had lived with came with strings. It meant putting everyone else's needs above her own. It meant being the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who didn't need praise as long as the bills were paid and the house ran smoothly. That wasn't love. That was labor disguised as duty. People often say that daughters are the emotional glue of the family, the ones who hold everyone together. But what they don't say is how often that glue is expected to go unnoticed, how easily it's taken for granted. Nicole had been the glue for years, paying bills, fixing problems, staying silent through rejection. And no one had ever stopped to ask her how she was. They only asked if the internet was working or if the fridge had been replaced. After the birthday, after the video call, after Liam said the word boss, and the masks fell away, she had finally stepped out of the mold. And what she found was not rebellion, it was relief. She didn't feel triumphant. She didn't want revenge. She just wanted to stop being invisible. And more than that, she wanted to stop apologizing for being seen. For weeks, Nicole had wrestled with the idea of guilt. Was she cruel for not helping her parents when they asked for money again? Was she heartless for setting terms instead of saying yes like she always had? But every time she asked herself those questions, a different thought whispered back. Why did love have to be proven with dollars? Why did affection have to be earned through sacrifice? She remembered sitting in the kitchen with her parents when they asked for $2,000 a month. They called it not much, said it was reasonable, given her job. But she remembered the years she'd paid almost $16,000 without anyone asking if she was okay. The years she had been the fallback, the fix-it person, the wallet. And when she asked about Claire, the answer was familiar. We can't pressure her. Pressure, apparently, was a privilege reserved for her. She had offered a clear, fair proposal. If she was to continue contributing, it had to come with terms, transparency, equality, and acknowledgement. Her father had called it disrespectful. He'd slammed his hand on the table, accusing her of treating them like a business deal. But to her, it was about dignity. Love without respect is just obligation. And Nicole was done living under obligation. She realized then that in many families, daughters are raised to be soft enough to forgive everything and strong enough to carry it all without complaint. They're expected to put themselves last, not because they're unloved, but because they're reliable. And Nicole had been reliable for too long. She had bent, twisted, and shrunk herself into whatever shape the family needed, until she no longer recognized herself in the mirror. The turning point wasn't dramatic. It was a quiet decision. She no longer wanted to be part of a cycle where her kindness was mistaken for currency, where her silence was interpreted as acceptance. She wasn't rejecting her family. She was choosing herself. And that choice, long delayed, was the bravest thing she'd ever done. As she walked through the city streets in the weeks that followed, she noticed things she hadn't before. The way the light hit the tops of buildings at dusk, the rhythm of strangers laughing in cafes, the peace of sitting alone without feeling lonely. She had started cutting the invisible strings one by one. She no longer waited for texts that never came. She didn't scroll through social media to see if they remembered her birthday. She just lived on her own terms. At work, she was respected. Liam kept things professional. Her team saw her as a leader, not someone's sister, not someone's daughter, just herself. And that was more than enough. She no longer questioned her decision. She had given and given and given. And when she finally stopped, the only thing she gained was herself. Real family, she had learned, is not who you share blood with. It's who sees you fully, hears you when you whisper, and values you even when you say no. Nicole wasn't cold. She was clear. And clarity, in a world that often demands daughters to give without limits, was her quiet revolution. She didn't need permission to reclaim her life. She only needed to believe she was worth more than the role they gave her. And now, she finally did. The Sunday afternoon air was calm, filtered with the kind of stillness that usually comes after a storm. Nicole sat by the window, a warm cup of tea in her hands, her laptop closed, her phone silent for once. No missed calls from her parents, no half-apology texts from her sister. Just quiet. And it was in that quiet she realized something important. She wasn't broken. She was finally whole. For years, she had carried the weight of being the reliable one. The one who picked up the pieces when others dropped them. The one who didn't ask for recognition. Who didn't complain when she was passed over or pushed aside. Nicole had played her role too well, and her silence had been mistaken for acceptance. But now she knew better. She had walked away, not out of vengeance, but out of self-respect. What surprised her most was how easy it had been. In the end, No dramatic speeches, no confrontations that escalated into shouting matches. Just boundaries, just decisions made quietly but firmly. She had said no for the first time in years, and instead of her world falling apart, it finally started to come together. Her family had always seen her as the dependable daughter, the one who didn't need anything in return. And when she stopped giving, when she finally said, "I deserve more than this," they didn't know how to respond. Because their version of love was built on her sacrifice. They had confused her willingness to help with permission to exploit. But love without respect isn't love. It's control wrapped in obligation. She remembered the moment clearly, her father slamming his hand on the table, shocked that she would dare ask for fairness. Her mother's tired voice, trying to soften the blow with guilt. And Claire, always the center of attention, accusing Nicole of being selfish for not fixing the chaos she helped create. It was almost laughable, but Nicole didn't laugh. She just sat there, calm and unmoved, because for the first time she saw it for what it truly was, not family but expectation, not affection but control. It wasn't easy to walk away, not because she doubted herself, but because of the stories we're told growing up. That family is everything. That good daughters always help. That silence is noble. But those stories only work when there's mutual respect. And Nicole had lived too long being invisible, only called upon when something broke, never when she was breaking. She wasn't angry anymore. That was the most unexpected part. Anger had been replaced by clarity, by a deep and unshakable knowing that she had done the right thing. She hadn't shut the door out of spite. She had simply stopped holding it open for people who never intended to walk through with love. Her days now were filled with real things. Work she loved. People who respected her, not for what she could give them, but for who she was. Liam never brought up Claire. He did his job well and treated Nicole with the professionalism and quiet admiration she had earned. And that was enough. There was no need to dwell on what had been said at that birthday. The truth had revealed itself, naturally, silently, and without her ever raising her voice. Sometimes people say choosing yourself is selfish, but Nicole knew better now. It takes strength to walk away from the version of yourself others expect you to be. It takes courage to say, "I will no longer carry what doesn't belong to me." And that's what she had done. She looked out the window, the light shifting as the sun dipped lower in the sky. She thought about her past, about the calls for help, the ignored birthdays, the quiet rooms filled with invisible judgment. None of it hurt anymore. It was just behind her. She had lived through it, and she had grown through it. Nicole hadn't written a final message or made a grand declaration. She didn't need to. She had found peace in her silence. And maybe that was the most powerful thing of all. She didn't want revenge. She didn't need them to apologize anymore. She just wanted to live her life on her terms without guilt weighing her down. Because in the end, the people who truly love you won't demand that you shrink to fit their comfort. They'll meet you where you are with respect, not requirements. And when you finally choose yourself, you'll see that the people who only loved your silence were never really listening in the first place. Nicole had made her choice. And this time, it wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about becoming everything she had always been, just finally for herself. This story powerfully reminds us that love without respect is not love, it's control. Nicole's quiet strength shows that setting boundaries, even with family, is not an act of cruelty, but an essential step towards self-worth. For years, she was treated as an afterthought, valued only for what she could give. But when she chose to walk away and protect her peace, she finally reclaimed her voice. The truth didn't need to be shouted. It revealed itself through her actions, her silence, and her refusal to be used any longer. This isn't just a story about rejection. It's about recognizing your value even when those closest to you don't. If you've ever felt like the invisible one, this story proves you're not alone and you don't need permission to choose yourself. If this message resonated with you, give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your story or your thoughts about Nicole's journey. Sometimes your voice might be the light someone else needs today.